pre-COVID, just at the start of my term as Director of Procurement. And I appreciate the fact that you'd given me a platform then, although I think back to those days and how different everything was and what my outlook was. I've often found myself quoting a former Montgomery County resident who recently got into an altercation on an airplane, apparently, Mike Tyson, who said, you know, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth. And that's kind of what my time with county government has felt like, where as much as I had these grand ambitions for what we could and would do, COVID pretty much sucked up so much of the oxygen. But, you know, we've, in the spirit of never letting a crisis go to waste, we've made a lot of changes to the office during the course of the last 2 years when COVID somewhat tied our hands behind us. But I'd love to share with you some of those changes, which would obviously would affect your members, and also share with you some of the things coming up that your members might be interested in engaging on. And I'm glad that you're recording the session, because I feel like sometimes these types of things are better viewed a second or third time to look more closely at the specific links that we're sharing or the specific tips that we're offering. So I hope that you get lots of use from the time we spend this morning. Accompanying me on this Zoom is also Grace Deno. Grace is my lieutenant, my deputy. She has been, frankly, somebody who first helped me orient myself to Montgomery County procurement, but then helped me spearhead a lot of the changes that you're going to see. If you like them, then I'll take the credit, and if you don't, then I'll let her take credit for them. But Grace is definitely one of my my rocks, and I'm so glad that she's here on this call with me. In the spirit of getting through some of the good stuff quickly, what I'll ask Grace to do is go to the headlines page. We'll talk about that really quickly, and then try to take you to where I think the really useful meat and potatoes of this presentation are. So Grace, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the slides, if you were able. And of course, we're happy to share this slide deck with you all as a separate PowerPoint presentation, if that's helpful. We've obviously named this roadmap to FY23, which, for those of you keeping track, is 2 months out for us. We start our new fiscal year in July. So starting with the headlines page, which is about, it's 2 pages in. Here's just some good news, if you will, in terms of what's happening at the Office of Procurement and the types of things we're up to. So first and foremost, you can see the local small business and the local small business reserve program designation. As you can see, we spent $129 million with that program in the last year. And if I am not mistaken, and Grace can correct me, I think the dollar sum that we spent there was the highest we have spent with local businesses, but I could be wrong. However, I can talk about what you see on the right of that, which is the FY21 MFD awards of 26.86%, which was the highest we have on record in 20 years. The thing is, prior to 20 years ago, we don't have records of what exactly happened. So it's possible that it's the all-time high, but it's hard to tell. And then in order to keep the steam going on these types of initiatives, and I'm sorry for jumping around here, sometimes the narrative goes better than the layout of these slides, which were intended for sort of self-consumption. You'll see on the top left, we talk about in the MFD space, where we also included the VA Services Disabled Veteran Certificate. When I started in this position, I realized we had 5 different entities that will allow you to certify as a minority female disabled entity and take advantage of our MFD subcontracting program. And what I always wondered is, why don't we have more entities that allow you to certify as a minority? And so, while making sure that we don't let folks in without actually meeting the needed criteria, because then that makes this whole thing unfair. There are some entities where if you pay them, they'll give you whatever designation you want. We went to find entities like the VA, which go through a pretty rigorous process to ensure that folks can get certified by them. In addition to that, we use the City of Baltimore, MDOT, SBA, and I'll actually make it a point to stop on the page where we show you that information, just so you can see where all you can get certified as a minority entity to be part of these programs. A metric that I started capturing once I got here, which has actually seen exponential growth year over year. My first year, we had honestly hit barely $129,000. In the second year, you see the savings hit 511. And last year, we broke $2 million in savings in the county, which again, as taxpayers, maybe as vendors, it's something that you might look at and feel like, well, there's some of our margins there. But as taxpayers, I think we should all be glad that that's money being used for opportunities that the county needs to be spending money on. And I'm glad that we included savings as a performance metric for the Office of Procurement. And then on the left-hand side, I just want to highlight something that I've been experimenting with. We found an unpaid, I don't know if the word is intern or scholar, but a University of Maryland student who's going to be doing research on green procurement for us. And my hope is to eventually make green procurement also a big part of how our office focuses on marshaling procurement dollars. And so my hope is if the Biden administration has a program for it to even hire a sustainability staffer in the upcoming year, and obviously do it in a way that offsets any costs by taking advantage of the federal desire to manage climate change. But I think green procurement, if I were to do any foreshadowing, I think is going to be a big part of the years to follow. Because if you speak to anybody who's a millennial or a Gen X, or even some, or Gen Z, or even some Gen Xers, they will tell you that climate change is probably one of the biggest issues that they care about right now. So that'll probably be something that you can look forward to seeing in the year and the years to follow. And with that, let's skip over to the page about the formal and informal solicitation. So I can just quickly talk to you about the type of procurements, with those headlines sort of hinting at some of those anyway. I just want to give you a sense of the different opportunities available. Grace, do you have the slide that says formal and informal solicitations, or am I? There you go, perfect. So what I want to talk to you about here is just the type of solicitations you can participate with when it comes to doing business with the county. This is just to orient you to what you have available as options. Some of you may be familiar with these already, but I think it's worth it to cover this, especially if somebody is being introduced to us for the first time. So formal solicitations are the most obvious type of solicitations that one would associate with my office. These are those big solicitations that are over $100,000 in value. They may come in the form of an IFB, which is an invitation for bid, or an RFP, which is a request for proposal. Obviously, the bids are based entirely on cost, and the RFPs are based on value, which means that there is a section that has to do with more than just the cost component. Although cost will have a certain number of points associated, you will have the ability to compete on other aspects that drive value for the county. And then there are many others, including REOIs, which is a request for expression of interest. But there are several other types of formal solicitations that you could engage with as well. And this is just one of them. But when you get to the informal solicitations, these are the ones between $100,000 and $10,000. You'll see that a change I made in April of last year was to reserve all of those solicitations under the local small business reserve program, which means that if you're not based in Montgomery County, then you cannot actually compete in these unless we find that nobody based in Montgomery County is capable of delivering those services. And again, when you think about the services that are between $10,000 and $100,000, really a business of almost any size should be able to take those. I think these are not something that you'd need to have very deep pockets or great ability to execute on. And I always figured, as we were getting out of the COVID pandemic, that maybe these $100,000 contracts would be the difference between somebody being able to survive for a couple more months or a year versus having to shut down. Anything that is over $50,000, so the formals as well as informals over $50,000 are subject to the minority female disabled requirement, which is a subcontracting law, essentially requiring you to allocate a certain percentage of your contract value to subcontractors who are minorities. And then any contract over $50,000 is also subject to the wage requirement law, which basically just means that if you are performing a service for the county, then you are paying your folks $15.40 or more. And if starting July, it's going to be $16 or more. And then a direct purchase order is something that actually does not fall within my purview. It is something that, a lot of you might be interested in those opportunities, but those are done by the departments under the authority of those department directors. There are several guidelines that we put in place, including a flag asking them to seriously think about finding a local vendor for these opportunities. And we've got a goal of 50% for those under $10,000 opportunities, but candidly, based on the last annual report, I don't think we even hit 30%. And it's something that again, it's an area that I'm interested in, because when you add those $10,000 transactions up, you get, frankly, over $80 million in spend. But it's a space that I have limited visibility into, because those transactions don't come through my office at all. They're done by the departments. But I keep trying to make technology changes and preaching the advantage of spending that money locally, because I am a Keynesian at heart, and I believe in the multiplier effect of investing taxpayer dollars in the local economy. Now, if you have any questions about these types of solicitations that I just referenced, definitely hold them to the end. We'll show you on the website where you can find these opportunities. But that just gives you a sense of what you're looking at when you're looking at our website. The formal solicitations, the big ones, anything from a several tens of $1 million construction opportunity to a potentially a professional service for HHS, which would be on the lower end of that 100,000 plus range. And then you've got the informal solicitations that would be 100,000 to 10,000 in the DPOs. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit about the compliance programs that you have, just because if you're going to do business with us, then you do have to understand those different programs. And frankly, if you want to do business with us, you can benefit from those programs. First and foremost, I've referenced a couple of times, is the minority female disabled person owned business program, which I keep referring to as the Mfd program. As you can tell, I've gone native and I've started speaking in acronyms. But the Mfd program is one where you, as a certified minority female disabled entity, and there's 6 different entities that will certify you if you haven't been certified already, are able to participate in our contracts as a subcontractor. We have matchmaking in that space, and we also have an enforcement team, and I'm hoping to strengthen the enforcement laws that allow us to make sure that our MFD subcontractors are treated fairly, and it is a great way to get your foot into the Montgomery County government ecosystem, or just government ecosystem in general. The local small business reserve program has been here for about 15, 16 years. This is where we set aside certain types of opportunities for local businesses only. Our office certifies you as a local business or a local small business, but it is something that if you've not done, then you are missing the opportunity to not only participate in certain set-aside contracting opportunities, but also serve as a local subcontractor, which is something that happens in contracts over $10 million. While we don't set aside contracts for local small business that are over $10 million, we do have a 10% requirement for them to bring a local subcontractor in. And when you consider that they also have a minority female disabled subcontractor program, you would be extremely desirable to them if you happen to check both those boxes, which means you happen to be a local business and you happen to be minority female disabled, because then they don't have to subcontract that much more. They get credit for those percentages just by bringing you on board. We have the local business preference program. This is something that we did just before COVID. I believe it actually was passed by council in June of 2020. And as I recall, Marilyn also was a staunch supporter of this particular law. And what this law does is it gives local businesses, for lack of better word, a 10% handicap. So if it is the RFP process, then you get 10% of the points just for being a local business. If it's an IFB, then as long as you are within 10% of the apparent awardee, apparent meaning they have the lowest bid, if they happen to be from out of the county, then you would be the awardee, essentially saying that even though you want the lowest bidder, you were within 10% of the lowest bidder. And since you are based in Montgomery County and they are not, you would be given that award. The local business subcontracting program, I told you it's the 10% for contracts over 10 million. the wage requirements law is what I mentioned in terms of the 1540 for this year versus 16 starting July. And then the prevailing wage law is for construction projects, and it very closely mirrors the state's prevailing wage law, which has to do with making sure that people are being paid fairly for the type of work they do on a construction site. So those are the socioeconomic programs, as well as the different types of procurement vehicles. And so with that, I'm just going to quickly touch on how we do outreach. Besides participating in events like this, we have two obvious methods for outreach. One is a newly redesigned newsletter that you can see on the left-hand side there. And what that does is goes out with local business opportunities to our mailing list. Even if you're not actively scouring our website, which I will show you how to do and where to look, this newsletter could sometimes, serve as a tickler to let you know that there's an opportunity that only a local company or local business could participate in. We also host numerous virtual fairs, and this is something that honestly I give a lot of credit to Marilyn for, because I had all but decided that this was a bad idea during COVID, and she and a couple of other folks talked me into it. And I'm so glad that we did it, because the first year we had 500 people attend, and the second we had more than 800. So this has clearly been a good idea. And it's really, we call it a fair, but what I really think of it as, it's a reverse trade show. Instead of you all telling us what you can do, I have different departments tell you what they're going to be needing, and based on them projecting what their needs are going to be. And I remember it was everything from flotillas for like fire and rescue to just regular health and human services from DHHS. It's just a really interesting opportunity to understand what we're up to. And in addition to that, I'm also hoping to host several more themed events. So for instance, on May 24th, and Grace, please chime in and correct me if I got that date wrong. I have so many dates swirling in my head these days. We're going to be hosting a minority business event, which is basically just an opportunity for minority businesses to do a deep dive into our programs, to understand what opportunities are available to you. We're going to have different entities outside of Montgomery County government, like WSSE and Prince George's County, participating, just so that you fully understand what all is available as a minority business. I'm also excited that this will be one of our first in-person events, now that Dr. Fauci has given us the green light. And so we will look forward to hosting you in our new offices in Rockville on that date. And given that I've not heard Grace's voice, I'm assuming I got that date right. In addition to that, I want to host a green procurement event, because like I said, I think that's going to be a big part of the future, not just for Montgomery County, but I hope for all of procurement. And besides those sort of more splashy events that are centered around a theme, I just want you to know that every third Wednesday of the month at 10 o'clock, we host an open house. And it's just to tell you about, what opportunities are coming up, what questions you might have. We do this feature event called Meet the Prime, where we basically invite former contract awardees to talk about their experience. And one of the things that has always struck me as interesting is that many of them will say that they didn't win it the first time they tried. But it is about being persistent. It's about realizing that if you didn't get it the first time, that just means that you got the opportunity to debrief and understand what you could have done differently and come back much stronger the second time. My hope is that when you don't get a contract from us, it doesn't send you defeated with your tail between your legs. It actually empowers you to understand exactly what you needed to have done differently, so that the next time, whether it's Montgomery County or elsewhere, you are the awardee for that particular job. So, these are all opportunities that we've put forward to allow you to engage with us, including social media that obviously everybody uses these days, regardless of who owns them. So the next section here is about our website. And what I wanted to do, rather than just talk about our website and show you a couple of screens, is actually have Grace jump into the website itself and just show you some of the things we did. But as she's pulling the website up, I'll tell you, our website was honestly something that I wanted us to do since I got here. But during the pandemic, I was able to use the fact that nobody could walk into our actual front door anymore because of the crisis. I was able to honestly pressure everybody in the county to allow me to get the funds and the resources to completely redo that website. So this is one of those things where, frankly, I think I would not have gotten it done if not for COVID creating the climate that it did of urgency around online presence and online performance. Another thing I was able to do is switch our office over to e-procurement. So we have gotten rid of not only our files, but even our filing cabinets. And we have everything now sitting on the cloud, which is extremely helpful from a telework perspective, as well as from an efficiency and green perspective, because we're not killing as many trees. Now, this is a new website, and hopefully the look and feel is still new enough, even though I launched this in 2020. It was designed with a very human-centric approach. It was designed to be user-friendly. It wasn't designed by a procurement person. It was designed by a person who would be looking at a procurement website who was not a procurement person. So it gives you certain bits of information right up front. The Solicitation Tracker is one of my first innovations here, which basically, if you enter the name of any solicitation, it will give you a status update on where it is. If it is an already closed solicitation, that it memorializes it. It tells you how long it took for us to complete it. It tells you where we got delayed. It tells you who the bidders were. It tells you who the awardee was. If it's a current solicitation, it'll just tell you, like a pizza tracker, it'll tell you where in the process that particular solicitation is, right alongside the solicitation information. And that's a good idea to pull one up. You will also see the name of the buyer involved. So this isn't an effort to hide from you. This is an effort to actually allow you to self-serve. But if you're not satisfied, to know exactly whom to reach out to. So you can see in this particular case, this was the big IT contract that went out last year. You see the process, you see we got held up during the proposed awardee being posted. Clearly, they spent a lot of time deciding whom to give these contracts to, and largely because we had a lot of people interested in getting these contracts. But during that process, you can see on the right-hand side, Jeffrey Steed's information is made available to you. He's the buyer. Again, this is just one of those ideas I had where, look, you don't need to come ask us these questions over and over again if you can get the answers yourself. But if you have questions that you want answered, we're going to make ourselves available to you. Now, besides this, you can see the different announcements, a calendar, which I found it funny that it was thought of as an innovation because we've had calendars since Julius Caesar, but the idea of putting information out there so that people know when it's coming, I think is still helpful. We created a video section, which again, inspired by TikToks, is these short videos that tell you how to register as a vendor. They tell you how to fill out a certain form. They tell you about certain processes like our IFB and RFP process. And honestly, I think the point I'm getting to right now is I'm going to have to come up with a better way of organizing this this giant repository of videos, because it's starting to get overwhelming. We're starting to create a lot of content here, and we probably need to do a better job of archiving it in a way that makes it immediately accessible and helpful. But there's some really good stuff in here, and I would strongly recommend taking a look at this if you don't have the patience to read through stuff. Though, if you do have the patience to read through stuff, you should know that our website has been translated into many languages, including Spanish and Chinese. So, besides English, obviously. One section that you need to see on our website is where the solicitations and contracts are posted. This is where you would find your opportunities to, so if you click on the formal solicitations, you will see all the different big opportunities coming up. Another one of those innovations here is, unlike most places where if you are interested in a solicitation, you'll have to download a 50 to 150 page document. Here, you just click on the view scope button, and it will actually tell you exactly what you need to do in a much more synthesized format. So you don't need to download the entire document. It'll basically say, hey, are you, Grace, could you also show the blurb pull up, not just the scope, but also the sort of the synopsis, if you will. There. So now this is all you need to read before you make up your mind of whether this is a solicitation you're interested in or not. And again, if you're a small business and you don't have the time to go through the entire solicitation in great detail, then just reading these paragraphs allows you to figure out whether this is for you or not. And if it is, then you can look at the scope. And if it still is something you're interested in, obviously you should read the whole solicitation, because you wouldn't want to not know about the subcontracting law, the local subcontracting law, for instance. Okay, so this is just one of those pages that you should you should bookmark, you should keep an eye on. There's obviously another page associated with the informal solicitations as well as the open solicitations. And an open solicitation simply just means that we are constantly looking for people in that space. And as needed, we will interview and bring you on board, versus a regular solicitation, which obviously is time bound. And at a certain point, we stop and we review the applications and we make selections. But all this is available here to you. In addition to this, we also have what I cutely dubbed the projections. This simply tells you about what is coming. It is not currently advertised, but the projections are just an idea of what is about to come. We don't need to go into that, Grace, if in the interest of time, it's right there alongside all the other information for you. Now, very quickly, a couple of other sections you want to look into are the local MFD and wage section, because this basically tells you about stuff like what our local SBRP law is, what it entails, how to get involved. In the MFD one, for instance, it would tell you about the different entities. Maybe click into the MFD one just so that people can see what different entities allow you to be certified as an MFD. You can take a screenshot of this if you want. You can come back to this website whenever and have a look at it. It also sets out the goals for these different, various different categories by minority group in terms of what we're trying to achieve. Okay, with that all said, I will show you one last aspect of this website. And again, the idea is not to do an entire web demo here, but I do want you to see how many resources are available to you if you just spend some time on this website, and that's the Vendor Resource Center. This entire section is brand new. It did not exist previously. It is something that I hope comes in very handy to our vendors. It's your one-stop shop, if you will. It gives you everything from process maps for our IFBs and RFPs, so you understand those processes, to some of the more intuitive resources that a vendor would be looking for, like the new vendor resources, or just the general guidelines around how things are working during COVID, et cetera. We had a vaccine requirement for a while, and we still have the vaccine requirement for new hires, but the testing requirements have been dropped since, at least in Montgomery County, we're out of the pandemic stage. So hopefully you found this web demo useful, and hopefully you'll come back to this website. Like I said, it's the type of thing where when I fly through it at this speed, the easiest way to keep track of things is by watching a video recording of this section. But on the website, there are also web walks that you could take a look at, which is very meta if you think about it. You need to go to the website to figure out how to get to the website, or use the website. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation deck. Grace, did I leave anything that you would have added in this presentation about the website?
No, I think you covered it all very well. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So then with that, I guess I can jump forward to just some of the things that I think they highlight some of the things I've shown you already, and they just highlight the spirit of continuous improvement that we have in the office. So if you, Grace, go to the page about COVID-19 response and recovery, I'd love to talk about some of that. This is just understanding how we've created a lot more flexibility with the different departments during COVID to be able to buy things. We even did a Cpap machine donation drive where, assuming that ventilators would be hard to find, we actually gathered 80 Cpap machines, which honestly, with God's grace, never came to use, which means that we never needed to use those in place of ventilators. It didn't get that bad in Montgomery County, but as you'll recall, in those days, New York City or even countries like Italy were making life or death decisions based on how many ventilators they had on hand. We were able to vet thousands of vendors for PPE, and I can say with great pride that even though we were supplying local nursing homes and hospitals, we never once actually found ourselves completely without anything, whether it was vinyl gloves or gloves with 3-inch cuffs. And then lastly, we changed the LSBRP program to include all informal solicitations to that, and you can see that information as well. I don't want to get into the rest of this slide deck because, frankly, it is mostly me patting myself on my back. If you look at the page about staff awards, you'll see that a lot of our staff were recognized by various national entities for the good work they did. If you look at the awards that our office has received, something that I take great pride in is up till 3 years ago, our office had only ever won 3 NACO awards, 2 NACO awards, I'm sorry. And since then, we have won 2 NACO awards every single year. And my hope is we continue to do that in the future. It just is indicative of the focus on doing things differently that we've taken on. And like I said, even through the pandemic, made sure that we are getting every drop of efficiency out of our team, out of technology, and frankly, out of the circumstances that we didn't choose, but were forced into. So with that, I'll ask Grace to just bring us to the very last page here, where we talk about the different useful links on the second to last page, and then the contact information for the various folks in my office who can be of assistance to you on the very last page. And that section, again, is something that's readily available on our website. But since we'll be sending this deck out afterwards, you can use this as a reference. But that's largely the information I wanted to cover. Again, I could have spent a few more minutes talking you through the various different recognitions and awards and sort of, micro efficiencies that we've found. But honestly, I'd rather let you engage with us and experience that rather than talk to you about it. So with that, let me open it up to Q&A. And this way we can talk about what you want to talk about rather than what we thought you want to talk about.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Oh, Frank, please, go ahead.
My question was just simply, how do we register to be part of the procurement public? Do we have to go to the website and register our entity with our NAICS code and so on?
Yes, so there is a link in the vendor resources for this. It's mcipcc.net. And again, you don't need to remember it. It's something that's readily available, I believe, even on this deck somewhere. But you would have to enter various information about yourself. And there is actually a video that tells you exactly what you need to enter in the video section, so that it really walks you through that process if you have any apprehension about it. But that link again would be mcipcc.net. And I'm looking at the last page of web links, and it's actually on the second to last page, and it's the second link after the procurement website. The next one is vendor registration system, and it's right on there in the presentation deck. Yep.
And Grace put it in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Ash, I have a question about the direct purchase orders, the departmental ones. So how would you suggest businesses get a handle on that? Because it's do they need to know somebody in each of the departments? How does one go about getting their foot in that door?
So that one really is a bit of a frustration for me, because again, like I said, while I literally don't even get to see what goes through there, it is a lot of money ultimately that in the private sector where I spent most of my time, they would call this the long tail of procurement. This is where a lot of money is spent with small dollar values. I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, it's not the type of spend where, to be honest with you, if you know any one person, it matters, because it's not like if you know the director of that department, like he's going to be figuring that one out. It's not even a division chief. Sometimes it's an admin who's just going to decide, hey, we're going to get a lunch from Panera today, that type of thing. But in all honesty, registering on our website is a very good idea, because when again, from the internal user's perspective, when you're on Oracle and you're about to submit a PO for this, it will actually prompt you to make sure that you've checked local businesses. And if you're not on there as a local business, then you will definitely not even have a shot. Now, does everybody see that prompt and actually go into the local business database to check it? To be honest with you, I suspect not. If they did, then I don't think we'd be at the percentage that we are. But the truth of it is, at this point, I think the best thing that you could do, the rest of it is frankly our job internally, not just mine, but the CAOs and the entire administrations. is to create more incentives and structures that encourage us to get closer to that 50% target. But at least what you can do, it's kind of like buying the lottery ticket in order to win the lottery. You do need to enter your information into that system, because you don't, then there's no way you're going to be getting that particular award. So I don't know, Marilyn, if I answered that question. It is a frustration for me. It is something that, again, I will continue to push. And my goal, I'm kind of doing this naming and shaming thing where I even told Grace when we saw the percentage, we should honestly highlight the departments that were wildly short in that goal. And maybe that gets the directors to remind their teams to be more deliberate about finding local opportunities. But truly, this is one of those things where if we're not constantly reminding them to think local, and you're not making yourselves available as local, then it's never going to get off the ground.
Thank you. Questions? I know a lot of people are off camera, but do you have questions about how to get started? Questions about your specific industry, perhaps? Mustafa.
Also, feel free to use the chats if that helps.
Mustafa, did you have a question? We can't hear you. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
No, actually, now that you're asking, in our specific case, we just opened an office in Gaithersburg, but we are incorporated in New York. So even though we're trying to grow a business in this area, how do we enter in your whole thing to be able to actually compete on any of these procurements and opportunities?
Sure. So a couple of things about that. One is the way we define local company may still allow a company incorporated elsewhere to be. Sorry, are you able to hear me? Okay. So the way we define a local company is one where more than 50% of its employees work out of the Montgomery County location, or more than 50% of its revenues come from the Montgomery County-based location. So that, frankly, might allow you to be a local company, even though you are not incorporated here. More recently, we changed our regulations to include nerve center language. So a company, and this is probably not the most relatable example, but I'll use it anyway to give you a sense of what I mean by nerve center. A company like Marriott has a lot of hotels all over the world, but because their nerve center is actually in Montgomery County, even though not all their revenue comes from Montgomery County-based locations, obviously, we still would consider them local because they truly are a Montgomery County-based entity one way or the other. Their headquarters in Montgomery County, nobody would question the fact that Marriott is in Montgomery County. So even the nerve center language would allow certain companies, if their executive team was based in the county, to be determined as a local business. That said, and I say this, both to assure you, but with some amount of trepidation, only 27.2% of our business went to local businesses. And I say that because I wish it were more, but at the same time, it is very clear that the majority of our business, our contracts still go to not Montgomery County-based businesses. So while you may not ultimately qualify as a local business, that does not mean that you could never do business with the county. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, it does.
Okay, so to take a look at, you can definitely reach out to Grace or to Michael Brown, who handles our local business program. He could look through your paperwork and see if you would qualify as Montgomery County based. But if you aren't for whatever reason, then that shouldn't make a difference. All it means is that you don't get to participate in those set-asides. And you, like I said, 70% of our contracts still go to not local businesses, and you would be part of that pool.
Mm-hmm. And then Penny's Mustafa's partner, asks, do they have to be certified as minority or women-owned before applying to procurement? I would guess the answer is no, but to get the credits, they would want to be, right?
Exactly. It behooves you to be, because you have access to so many opportunities, subcontracting opportunities, that I would rather, if I had the ability to be certified, But depending on who you go with, like I've heard MDOT takes a considerable amount of time. They don't charge you anything for it, but then it takes you a minute to get certified. I would get certified as quickly as possible, but in the meantime, I would register as a business that wants to do business with us anyway. And then as you get your certifications, we can help you partner with organizations to take advantage of that minority designation as well.
And then Ash, can you talk just briefly about that certification process? I think it's not readily apparent for people to go to DOT because it's not the industry, but they are a certifying agency. Can you just talk briefly about that?
So it is one of those things where depending on who you work with, like I believe VBank and the Capital Region Supplier Development Council, I believe they have membership dues associated with their memberships, but for that reason, their certification process also tends to be quicker because they have fewer people in the pipeline versus say City of Baltimore or MDOT or Veterans Affairs, who I think would do it at no cost, but would then have the burden of dealing with more entities. Now, I think, and this is something that I'm digging into my memory for, I sat through a session that we hosted with MDOT showing you, and so just to be clear, it's Maryland Department of Transportation, not the county's Montgomery County Department of Transportation that does the certification. But I remember that their paperwork is fairly rigorous and lengthy. And again, I recognize the fact that it is a barrier to entry because of the work it requires, but it also allows them to be thorough and make sure that you aren't just pretending to be a minority entity, that you truly are and you have all the documentation to prove it. So I think each of these entities has, and again, Grace, correct me if I'm overstating it, but I feel like it's like almost a 30-page process with MDOT. But again, it's worth the juice is worth the squeeze, if you will, because once you've done that, you are part of this smaller group of businesses that get special. Again, I don't want to call it privileges because the entire point of this is to make up for the historic lack of opportunities made available. But it does put you in an opportunity where you can take advantage of things that other people cannot. So again, I don't know that I've answered your question directly. And I think the reason for it is because there's probably 6 different processes, Marilyn, that would allow you to get there. And some of them are quicker than others. But I think it is worth pursuing any one of them because you don't need more than one. It's redundant to that point, but it is worth pursuing it if you are eligible for it.
Thank you. Other questions out there? Let me look at my notes. So I think that the Wednesday open house, I think, are very valuable. People may want to put that on your calendar, see if you can pop in, just because you'll continually get more familiar. You'll learn the lingo, the language, right. And just get more familiar with that. And then I also just want to say, don't be afraid of the process. If it's a relatively easy process to register with the county. And if you're not finding it intuitive, please reach out to the department because they can help you. I mean, their goal is to get small local businesses registered. So if you consider it an obstacle and a barrier, please reach out to do that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Ash, you mentioned that you help to partner with other organizations. Can we learn more about that? How you help? Because
Sure.
usually contractors, they require some experience with any local government organization, which in our particular case, we don't have. We work only with individuals right now, our parents. We don't have experience working with any. We do have experience working with private school, but not in Montgomery County or Maryland at all.
So I'll give you 2 different answers to that question, and I think they're both good points to make anyway. One is when you register with us at mcipcc.net, you will find that is a portal used not only by Montgomery County government, which spends about $1 billion a year, but also by MCPS, Montgomery College, HOC, Parks and Planning. So it is a good resource in terms of just putting your name out there. In fact, a lot of our primes even search that database to find subcontractors that they want to work with, which, by the way, may be your foot in the door, where potentially you don't come in as a prime, and I don't know the space you work in, but potentially you have the opportunity to come in as a subcontractor. That said, when it comes to becoming a prime, I've often sort of jokingly said that, you know, when you're buying a diamond, there are the 4 C's, I don't know, cut, carat, clarity, something or the other. I've not bought a diamond in a while. And you know, in marketing, they say there's the 4 P's: price, place, promotion, product. In procurement, there are the 4 R's. The first is do your research, understand what the county is trying to buy. It is one of those things which a lot of people won't do. Second, register. Make yourself available to us. If you're not on our radar, we're not going to be able to give you a contract. The third is be responsive. When a solicitation is put out, respond to the questions being asked in there. And then the last piece is what you touched on, which is being responsible, which is demonstrating the ability to actually do the work. And I will tell you, Grace's team does do a pretty good job of looking for barriers to entry, where if somebody says that, oh, you had to have done this work in the past 3 months at a building this big, for example, she would call that basically an artificial barrier, where we're basically just saying that we want the incumbent to get the contract again, right? Who else has been doing this work like 3 weeks or 3 months ago but the incumbent? So she does make sure that there's not language that would prevent a company such as yours from getting its foot in the door. And another piece of data, and again, just to throw this out there, and I don't know the exact number, but it should be on our website. Something like 40% of the contracts we give out each year are to companies that we've never done business with before. So you don't need to have done business with us. Almost half of our vendors are brand new to our ecosystem every year. Now, granted, 60% of them still are incumbents, but I think some of it has to do with the fact that in certain industries, there are only so many players, and very often we are working with most of them. But by and large, while I recognize what you're saying, based on the fact that you've done this work for schools, even if not government entity schools, I think you should not have a hard time proving your responsibility. And given that you obviously won these solicitations before, you obviously know how to be responsive. So just do your research, find those opportunities, look at our projections, look at our website for opportunities, sign up for that newsletter. And you know, when the time comes, and if you're registered already, I'm sure that you will have a competitive submission to send to us.
Okay. Thank you for your response. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anybody else?
And Marilyn, you mentioned about open house, Wednesday open house. What open house is it?
So it's an opportunity to meet my team. You'll meet Grace, and you meet Grace, her outreach manager, Michael Brown, who's the local reserve or local programs manager. A lot of our buyers, our specialists who actually work with the departments to get the solicitations out, will also participate. Usually if there is a particularly interesting solicitation forthcoming, like the IT contract or something, you'll have folks able to talk knowledgeably about where that is and what's going on with it. So it's just what I hope is an informal way for you to understand what you need to in order to do business with us. It's hosted, like I said, every month on the third Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m.
Oh, so
right now, and it's on our calendar on the website as well. And right now it's still being done virtually, which has a huge advantage, which is that you don't need to shut your office to come see us. You can just do it from your desk at the office. And we also archive these events so that if you were too busy during the middle of the day or 10 o'clock, then you could catch up while having dinner on your phone on the content that was covered in that meeting. So we're trying to make this, again, as easy to consume as possible. And as we put COVID further and further behind us, my hope is to make those meetings more accessible, maybe move them around the county so that they're live and simulcast, but maybe in different locations, but all that is yet to happen.
Okay, yes, this is great. I'll definitely sign up for the next meeting. We will go to reach out Montgomery County Recreational Department for some solicitations. Thank you.
Absolutely. Awesome.
I'd like to take this opportunity to notify, in case if there's any IT companies in the audience, our large IT consulting contract solicitation is on the street. It was posted 2 days ago. It's the MCATS contracting opportunity. We will be looking for 8 contract awardees. So if you are interested, please do take a look at that.
And again, keep in mind, since you most likely are Montgomery County based, you would get 10% preference points in this particular solicitation versus a large out of state or out of county company.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, last call for questions. And so we'll get out the slides to everybody. We'll get out I was going to say taping, it ages me, the recording. But so we have a saying in the chamber, it's what happens between the meetings that matter, right? So you got a lot of great information today, but you can't just sit on it. You have to take action. So go on, look at the website, go on the website, register. If you get stuck registering, please contact Ash or Grace or me. We can get you in the right direction. So we're very happy to help. My view is the more that we can get you business, the more successful you're going to be. So please help us. Grace just put her email in the chat, and it's going to be on the slides. So so great. Any last words, Ash or Grace?
No, just thank you again for the time. You know, if you've worked with us before and not succeeded, don't be disheartened. It seems that the people who get the contract are the people who tried that one other time that everybody else didn't. So just, you know, keep working at it. I don't think you'll ever find us having had a more empathetic posture than we do now because of the type of people that we have in the office, the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic that has frankly humanized us, maybe more so than anything else. So if you've not done this in a while, please come back into our ecosystem, engage with us. We're looking forward to working with you.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you.
fabulous day, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
bye-bye.